Welcome back. We just talked about the current and future state of energy storage in space. So now let's go back down to Earth to consider what our domestic battery revolution could look like. Our next panel is called Leapfrogging, Roadmap to a US Battery Future. And our distinguished panelists will consider the ideas we've discussed today about energy storage science and technology, markets and finance, and policy and regulation. They'll sketch out the next steps we need to take to fully realize this vision of a robust battery production ecosystem in the US. And now let me introduce our esteemed panelists. First, it's my distinct honor to announce that one of our panelists is Julie Blunden, who currently serves as the board chair for New Energy Nexus Catalyst. She's a board member for New Energy Nexus Ventures and ABTC, independent board member of Zinc 5, and she also serves on the board of advisors for Plus Power. She's held executive roles at EVgo, SunPower, Green Mountain Energy, Sun Edison, and was CEO of Climate Works Foundation. Welcome, Julie. Jim, you're next. I am so delighted to have you here with us on the panel. Jim Greenberger is the co-founder and executive director of NAATBatt International, a not-for-profit trade association of advanced battery manufacturers and their supply chain partners doing business in North America. Welcome, Jim.
Honored to be here, Noël. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And next, Dave Howell. Dave is our director of the Vehicle Technologies Office at the U.S. Department of Energy, whereas he's responsible for the department's $400 million advanced vehicle R&D portfolio. Welcome, Dave. And last but not least, oh, thanks, Dave. Last but not least, we've got Esther Takeuchi, who is chief scientist and chair of the Interdisciplinary Science Department at Brookhaven National Laboratory, and is the SUNY Distinguished Professor in the William and Jane Knapp Chair in Energy and the Environment at Stony Brook University. Welcome, Esther.
Great to be here.
All right, let's get right down to it, panel. Here's our first question. In our discussions today, we've heard a lot of exciting ideas about the challenges and the opportunities of building out a domestic battery supply chain. So given these discussions and your particular area of expertise, what should we be focusing on starting today and over the next 10 years to achieve this goal? What does success look like?
You know, one thing I was going to say, Noël, is that we've got a real window of opportunity right now. It's an amazing moment. We actually have demand for electric vehicles growing faster than expected, ironically, partially due to the pandemic. At the same time, the entire supply chain globally can't quite keep up at the same ramp rate that the demand is, which means we've created higher prices for things. That means that there's a unique moment of opportunity. It's probably a couple of years long here, where the capital markets are going to see high prices and be willing to invest in CapEx, for example, for domestic supply chains, which we've talked a lot about today. So I think one of the things that's useful to remind ourselves of is that this is a unique window. We really need to take full advantage of it.
Certainly agree, Julie. Let me add a few things, Noël. You know, one of the things we need, you hear a lot about gigafactories today, and the supply chain is more than gigafactories. You need to look at the entire supply chain from upstream material supply, refined materials, all the way through battery component manufacturing like cathodes, anodes, and electrolytes, and key components like that. Cell production, certainly important, pack production, and then even toward the end of life, recycling. All of these things have value across the supply chain. And if we want to realize a sustainable ecosystem, we definitely need to put a significant effort in recycling spent lithium batteries, getting those spent lithium batteries back into the supply chain, and those materials particularly represent a key domestic supply of materials going forward. And with that, we also want to look at the gaps that we have in the supply chain. Those areas where we can't supply the minerals that we need to connect with foreign sources of materials, what we call friendly allies and partners for extracted materials. And of course, filling in those gaps. It's not just about lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Can you refine them here? Can you purify them? Can you develop the precursors of those materials? So any one piece like that could wreak havoc with the supply chain if there's disruption. So one of the things that we're developing are the strategies across the federal government to assure that we have a resilient domestic ecosystem for batteries going forward.
Well, in terms of what to look at to measure success, I think that I would focus on the automotive industry, the vehicle industry. The vehicle industry employs more Americans than any other industry other than healthcare. And it is going through what is really a once in 100 years retooling of the industry. And he who retools to make the automobiles best and most efficiently will end up with the lion's share of that market in the global market going forward. So success, I think, in electrification will really reflect on success of the American vehicle industry in the 21st century. If we are successful in making the transition efficiently and strategically, I think we will see a very robust vehicle industry in the US going forward. If we're not able to do that, we risk losing a lot of jobs to foreign competitors.
Thank you, Jim. You know, this sounds like a tall order, but I think we're up to the task. There's a lot of excitement today amongst the audience and the entire ecosystem that's coming together here. But let's talk about how we're going to get there. What current work can we leverage to help us take this next step, and what's coming down the pike?
I would just throw out the example of the LiBridge initiative, which Dave and his colleagues at the Federal Consortium for Advanced Batteries have stood up. It's really an effort to reach out to private industry in order to get their input on a national strategy for developing the lithium-ion supply chain. I'm honored at NAATBatt, together with my colleagues at New Energy Nexus and New York Best, have been selected to be facilitators of industry involvement in the LiBridge project. And we're going to be undertaking that task over the next several months to make sure that US industry really has an opportunity to weigh in on how best the United States should be positioning itself to succeed in the 21st century in the lithium-ion supply chain. In order to do that, I think we got to answer a number of questions at LiBridge in which input by industry is welcome. In particular, what is the problem exactly that we're trying to solve? Is it just making more batteries? Is it just domesticating a supply chain? What is the problem we really need to solve? Where to play for US companies? What is a US company? And that's something that we keep talking about, domesticating the supply chain. What constitutes a domestic company? We don't have a good definition of that, and we need to get one. How to win in the competition? Where should we be playing? Where should we not be playing? Where are the strengths of US industry? And where are the weaknesses of US industry? And how can we accommodate those? And finally, what success really looks like. We're going to be making batteries in North America, whether we want to or not. That's the truth of the matter. We have the second largest automotive industry in the world. We sell second most cars are sold in North America after China. And batteries are hard and difficult to transport. They will be made here. But what is it that we can do beyond simply assembling batteries or have others assembling batteries for us that will really put American business and American workers in a favored and positive seat in the 21st century going forward? That, I think, really is what the LiBridge project is going to be looking to answer. I know we have a number of, we're in the process of organizing the LiBridge initiative now. We'll be doing a number of surveys of industry to try to get broad industry input. The first of those surveys is really the program coming up that I think Dave is hosting on March 16th and 17th, really inviting industries to submit 3-minute videos to the DOE in order to weigh in on how the FOA 2678 money should at least initially be invested. Again, I don't think Dave and his colleagues are looking for applications verbally at that program, but believe it or not, there's probably a lot of, we're looking for good ideas. We're really looking for good ideas. And I know Dave and his colleagues are, to better inform the decisions that they're going to be making in the not too distant future. We've also stood up 6 topic committees within LiBridge that will be examining 6 different areas of each a swim lane to work on those particular questions I had mentioned. We will have 4 forums that we've already scheduled on April 5th, May 4th, June 15th, and June 20th, in which members of industry will be invited to participate. Will be a post-forum workshop to really sort of consolidate everything that's been learned and discussed, and finally a white paper that will be put together by the leader of this whole initiative, which is Boston Consulting Group, who's kindly agreed to help us sort of consolidate all of this work and come up with a good work product that we hope will be useful to the country going forward. So that's the LiveBridge initiative.
Jim, thank you so much. And it's just an exciting time, and we're really excited at Berkeley Lab to be supporting you on LiveBridge as well. So congrats, and we can't wait to see what happens. Now let's take a slightly different track now and go back to another cross-cutting theme that we heard come out today quite a bit, which was us talking about workforce development. How do we make sure that the opportunities for good paying jobs are broadly available? And how do we make sure that our workforce has the training they need to succeed in these jobs?
Noël, let me comment on this one. The energy landscape is really undergoing a very significant transformation, and we're going to see this in electric vehicles and the electrification of how we move ourselves and move goods and everything else. So it's, as you said, it's an incredibly exciting time. I think this is going to bring real opportunity to the US, significant opportunity with many, many kinds of jobs. And let me describe just a few. The first is certainly in the research arena, where college graduates, master's students, PhD students are really all going to be necessary to push forward and invent those next generation batteries that are going to be so critical for us to remain competitive globally and have US continue to lead in innovation and science. But beyond that, manufacturing expertise is going to be hugely in demand. And this is going to involve many aspects of it. It's going to be design, it's going to be process, it's going to be assembly, it's going to be materials preparation and materials handling. All of those things are going to be so critical to move forward with energy storage manufacturing. So I think what's really going to be important is to continue to close the loop between industry, academics, government agencies, national labs, to see where the gaps are. Where do we need to invest in broader training to make sure that not only people have the opportunity to participate and succeed in these jobs, but that industries have the people they need to move forward with the appropriate processes and products and sales that they need to make the US manufacturing not only competitive, but world leading.
Let me add to what Esther said. Couldn't agree more. One of the things that we're doing here in the department is to try to understand where the levers that we can push and pull in order to support, the build out of the workforce. And, so, the battery industry is young and growing in the United States, definitely needs a trained workforce to ensure, American competitiveness over the long haul. And so there are workers, for example, auto workers who could transition to manufacturing batteries and electric vehicles, but there are training gaps. So what we're trying to do is identify what those gaps are, where federal resources could play in order to develop a more sectoral strategy, to develop a national training standards and guidelines, working with folks like LiveBridge and others, working with unions and state and local programs, and of course not only university programs, but community college, technical schools and things of that nature. So we're just sort of actually pulling together that strategy. Input through LiveBridge and other places will inform what we do here in the future, alongside of what industry is doing. Industry is, they're not going into this blindly. There's a lot of training activities, industry or company by company, that we sort of want to make more of a national strategy where we're all moving forward in this across the nation, because this is a big deal. I think the Energy Secretary mentions that the clean energy industry itself represents about a $23 trillion industry by 2030. We need to take advantage of that as a nation and make sure that we are prepared to capture that value for our own nation.
Thanks, Dave. And there are a lot of people working on this. It's another exciting topic, but one that needs a lot of coordination. And there's just so many groups out there that are excited about this. I know the DOE's Energy Storage Grand Challenge has a workforce group. You mentioned the FCAB has a workforce group. Jim, do you want to chat about anything that NAATBatt's doing in this space?
Well, I just wanted to weigh in on an important topic that I know is a theme of this conference, and that is equity, where I think there's a serious equity issue here. For the last 30 years, we've had about half of all Americans, those are the Americans that work with their hands, who have really been left behind in our knowledge economy. Those of us who have done well in the knowledge economy and who are well positioned to continue doing well in the knowledge economy really have an obligation to that other half of our nation to help bring them along into this new era of electrification, to make sure that they have jobs that they can do, that they can have status that makes them feel whole. And that makes it so important that we really nail this battery thing and nail this transition of the vehicle industry, so that our fellow countrymen continue to have good paying jobs and continue to have bright futures. We've seen, unfortunately, the stark reality of what happens in our national politics over the last 10 years, when that equity issue has not perhaps been adequately addressed. We need to do a better job of that. But what we're working on now really does help address that. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Thanks, Jim. And equity is one of those other cross-cutting themes that we've just talked about all day. You heard this morning from Mary Barra talking about making EVs more affordable. And I know that each of you are personally and professionally invested in ensuring that this shift to clean energy includes all communities. So I was wondering, for the rest of the panel, how are you thinking about this in the context of today's discussions?
I think about equity when it comes to clean energy in two aspects. One is, does everybody have access, and can everybody participate in the benefits of clean energy? Meaning, can we reduce the price tag of electric cars? Can we make charging broadly available? So all communities can benefit from having a clean, less polluted environment. But I think the other part of it that speaks to equity is what we were just touching on in the prior question, that the jobs that are going to be created, the economic boost that can really happen from implementation of clean energy is accessible to a broad cross-section of people, that they, as Jim was saying, that they can participate in the manufacturing piece of it. So part of it is, can everybody take advantage of using and having access to clean energy? And then can a broad section of the community and the population in the United States benefit from the economic boost, the economic driver that the clean energy transition is going to provide for the nation? And I think the answer to both of those is they're both possible. We just need to make sure that it happens.
Thank you, Esther.
The card deck is really being reshuffled, if you will. And a lot of the communities that maybe didn't get such high valued cards in the last shuffle of the automobile and the energy industry may have an opportunity this time around to come up and hold a better hand. That's something, again, that we should keep an eye on and really feel good about and work to make sure it happens.
Thanks, Jim.
So I'll just add here. Jim, I think, mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law includes quite a bit of funds to stand up a battery ecosystem in the United States domestically. One of the priorities that we have within this is to support retooling, retrofitting, and expanding existing facilities, particularly in those areas that are going to be impacted by this transition from conventional internal combustion engine vehicles and drivetrains to electrified drivetrains. So that's going to be part of our goal to ensure that we are targeting those areas that would specifically be impacted by the transition of new energy vehicles, but also supporting applications, particularly prioritizing those applications across the nations in environmental justice zones and things of that nature. And I will add, we've always had a focus in our R&D program to drive down the cost of batteries and electric drive systems. All of this to make new vehicles cost competitive with conventional vehicles on a head-to-head basis without government subsidies. So we'll continue, even though we have manufacturing money to establish manufacturing plants, we'll continue to try to drive down the cost of batteries and improve the performance as we go. There's a lot of headroom there to do that.
Thanks, Dave. And let me take this idea of cost and performance, and let's talk about the market a little bit. We know that the market is going to play an important role in the shift we've been talking about all day, and that it's really critical that we understand how it can enable and challenge the adoption of this new clean energy paradigm. So how is this team thinking about this? What steps should we be taking to both leverage and mitigate market forces?
One of the most important things that I think we need to acknowledge right now is that we're in a position where we are being allocated batteries, and we're going to be in that position for several years. And what that means is that we have light duty vehicles competing with medium and heavy duty vehicles for batteries. It also means that we have the folks that are building central station storage and distributed storage competing against the EV manufacturers for batteries. There's going to be a brief period where that's a real challenge. And we're going to need to be able to acknowledge the fact that folks are going to, in some cases, it's not just a question of what the price is, it's pure availability. Whether or not people are actually reneged on contracts and batteries don't show up at the port. During that period, I think we need to be sensitive to the market dynamics that will be brief, but potentially quirky, and focus on the opportunity to establish longer term thinking around battery supply. So the beautiful thing is we're doing the work now to establish the kind of battery supply that will allow us to no longer be in a position where we are at risk of battery delivery. But during the next couple of years, there could be some quirky periods that we need to be sensitive to.
Thank you, Julie.
And I would agree with Julie. We have to appreciate the quirkiness of the market and the free market and understand what it does really well, but also what its limitations are. I've always believed that anything that you can make money in within a 5-year time horizon, the best thing the government can do is just get out of the way. But there's a lot of things involved in battery technology that do not necessarily produce a return on investment within a 5-year time frame. And that's where public money and government attention can perhaps best be directed. And thinking about what that paradigm are, where the market works and works really well and where it may not work so well, is really part of, and I'm sure one of the things we're going to be addressing in Lightbridge, but one of the important questions that we really have to think about as we think about priorities for Dave and his colleagues in government. Where do we focus? Where does industry really need the help? Because there are areas where the market doesn't work so efficiently. And that's what we have to identify, and that's what we have to focus on.
I'll just add a little to that. Just mentioning, there's an international flavor here. We need to ensure that we have connections into our long-standing partners so that we will have resilient sources of extracted materials where we do not have them here in the United States. We have domestic resources, but not for several of the critical minerals that we need. And so that's going to be really important. So within the federal consortium, we are really developing an international strategy, sort of our near-term reach and then our mid-term reach and far-term reach in terms of our international partners to ensure that those partnerships are in place and those agreements are in place for material supply. And I can't stress enough on recycling. We really need a national recycling policy. All of this just to stabilize the amount of key materials that there are here in the United States. And we can start, with recycling consumer electronic batteries right now. We just need the policies in place. We need the motivations in place to collect those batteries, get those to the recycler, and pull those key materials back out. A lot of lithium there, a lot of cobalt, aluminum, copper, a lot of good stuff there. So we need to make sure that we have policies in place early in order to take advantage of just the consumer electronic market and then map that to the electric vehicle market and stationary market as well. Our goal here in the department is to develop a recycling ecosystem that collects 90% of the spent lithium batteries, wherever they come from, and then get those to a second use if needed, or to a recycler, and then reclaim 90% of the key materials from those batteries and get those materials back into the material supply chain. We need to make sure that we achieve that goal.
Thank you, Dave. And now, since we've talked about the role of the market, let's talk about something that's potentially even more important, which is the role of innovation as we strive to meet these really august goals. So if we can't meet our goals with our current tools and knowledge, and in some cases we can, but for those that we can't, are there opportunities to leapfrog to some kind of new state of the art?
Sure, 100%. We're always there's been actually several great examples that have come through either federal programs, the labs, and state programs like NYSERDA and the Energy Commission, where we're seeing, one of the things I just love seeing is where we've got innovations that have the potential to be near-term step changes in cost structure or productivity, efficiency within a few years because they drop into existing manufacturing. That is fantastic. Full court press on those opportunities while in parallel working on the longer term opportunities. The other thing I want to give a shout out to is everybody, and this goes to workforce as well as the great work at the national labs, is thinking about how to take QA/QC, quality assurance and quality control, and bring that up to a standard that is best in the world. And if there was one thing I would ask the national labs to think about is how to center yourself in alignment with industry to make the United States the pinnacle of quality assurance and quality control, because that's the single biggest risk we really have, is that we actually undermine market acceptance by having poor performance either early in market dynamics or later on if we try to go to second use and it's not working so well. So I offer that as a challenge as we think about how to take advantage of our federal and state alliances and think about how to work with our industrial partners who often think about those things as being very much in their wheelhouse uniquely. But I actually think if there was one place where we ought to be sharing, it would be on QA/QC.
Let me add, typically when we talk about leapfrogging, we talk about driving the cost down of a battery or increasing its performance. And there's a lot of headroom there to do that, whether you go to solid state materials, lithium metal, things of that nature. And we'll continue to push that. I think we have to stir in a couple of other metrics. One is on sustainability, reducing the amount of critical minerals that are needed, and recyclability of materials as well. So, and I'll just also just finish up on that thought that the bipartisan infrastructure law that we just mentioned about establishing, battery manufacturing capability and materials manufacturing capability also includes significant funds for large scale demonstrations, minimum of $50 million from the federal government matched by industry. So a minimum of a $100 million demonstration activity to leapfrog current technologies, whether it's processing technologies for current for current battery systems, or even going to the next generation of battery systems. So, we hope everyone's thinking about that, because we're looking forward to reading your proposals on that. That's very exciting. And that gives us hopefully a head start to leapfrog to the next generation.
Dave, we should keep in mind that the United States has one big advantage in the battery race, and that is that we're way behind everybody else. That is, a friend of mine in investment banking once pointed out, you never want to be the first banker to do a certain type of deal. You always want to be the second one to do it, because you get to learn from all the mistakes and all the successes of those that went first, and then you get to make all the money. So I have a feeling this new battery economy, this new energy storage economy is actually going to work out very well for us. We just need to be unafraid to look very closely at technologies and structures and engineering that has been developed by other countries who may have a 10, 20-year head start on us in developing these technologies. Not be afraid to learn from them and to find ways to improve on it. And I have no doubt we will be able to leapfrog our way into a leadership position for our industry.
Thanks, Jim. And we're going to move to the last question very quickly here, because I can't let you go until I've asked you about the role of the national labs and more broadly of the national research ecosystem in generating these solutions all the way up the value chain. So final thoughts.
Now, let me jump in really quick here. I'm so convinced that the US has always been just tremendously innovative, tremendously creative. We need to translate that creativity into something practical. And I couldn't agree more with Julie regarding QC/QA. So let's bring together industries, bring their problems to the national labs. Let's figure out how to work together, put great minds forward to solve these problems. If we have commitment to this, we can make it happen.
National labs are one of the great outsourced R&D opportunities in the world. And we've got to find a better way to allow US industry to use that outsourced R&D a little bit better than we do today. It really should be a focus of our discussion regarding batteries and probably a lot of other technologies as well.
I just love to see ways for the labs to be able to handle internships at a much higher volume. I love the fact that DOE just hired, has a plan to hire 1,000 more people. I think revving folks through national lab quality research techniques is something that a lot of people think, oh, I want to go work for a startup. What you're going to learn at the national lab is very different than what you're going to learn at a startup. Getting both in your portfolio early in your career, dynamite.
Well said.
Steve, any
And
final
I'll
thoughts?
just agree.
Okay, perfect. Talk about short answer. Love it. Okay, guys, this has been incredible. I couldn't agree more with everything you said. With that, we've reached the end of our final panel for the day. And I just want to thank you all so very much for helping us map out the next steps in our US battery revolution. I'm sure everyone in the audience is very eager to continue talking about these ideas. So everyone stay tuned for the happy hour, which is coming up momentarily, where you're going to be able to do just that and talk to others about that. But first, let's close out day one. Thank you, panel.
Thanks, Noël.
Thank you.
Noël.